Dragon Ball Dissection contains zero use of artificial intelligence. It's just my intelligence. God help us all. Four months have passed since Freeza has revived, which is apparently plenty of time for him to make up the massive skill and power gap that has grown since he died so long ago. Well, it's not as if I'm against characters being able to be useful again. I enjoy that. And it's also not as if Freeza hasn't always been aware of other benchmarks, other challenges to his power. When Sorbet tells him that Son Goku has defeated Majin Buu, Freeza not only mentions that his father told him never to tangle with Majin Buu, he adds, completely unprompted, his father also said never to mess with the god of destruction, Beerus. Everybody loves Beerus. Whenever Beerus is not on screen, all the other characters should be asking, where's Beerus? Anyway, as I said, 4 months have passed, so just like in the movie, Jocko comes to Earth to warn Bluma of Frieza's impending invasion. Unlike the movie, Jocko isn't welcomed to Earth by Bluma's doddering father. That doesn't have nearly enough zazz. You know who has zazz? Goten and Trunks. I do like this substitution. These are very exposition-heavy scenes. I wish it was primarily because of Frieza's return, but a lot of it is also having to explain who the hell Jocko is, because he's never been a Dragon Ball character prior to this story. The antics of the kids, them messing with Jocko and messing with his ship, help elevate this above a staid talking heads scene. Now, I already made 2 videos on Jocko the Galactic Patrolman. When I covered the Resurrection F movie, I apparently successfully pranked far more people than I thought I would with a fake recap of the events of Jocko the Galactic Patrolman. I'm not going to repeat all of that stuff again, either the real stuff or the fake stuff, but it is interesting just how many jokes and tidbits these scenes pull straight out of Jocko. Trunks mistakes Jocko's name as Zako, small fry, just like his grandmother. It establishes the protrusions from Jocko's head are not his ears, but a communication device. Jocko even specifically defends against the accusation that he's wearing tights. Now, cross-language chicanery could result in this being a coincidence. However, the word both Trunks and Jocko use is the English word tights. There's no way this isn't meant to be a reference to the character. Oh, also Jocko is aware of Beerus too, although he thinks he's only a myth. And it's not that he thinks the concept of a god of destruction is the myth, he specifically reacts to Beerus the name. It just seems so much less special for our characters to discover this mysterious and important god when everyone else in the universe considers him mundane trivia. I guess we need 12 universes because stuff like this makes it feel like only 100 people live in this one. Anyway, Bluma gets on the horn to Kuririn, who decides to put on the old martial arts duds and have his wife shave his head. This is pretty much straight from the movie. I originally planned to talk about it then, but I ran out of time and knew I'd be coming back to it later anyway. Does it bump anybody else that Kuririn goes to this instead of number 18? From a story perspective, it makes sense. Kuririn knows Frieza, while number 18 has no connection to Frieza at all. This version is even going to build off of that established connection. However, the scene struggles to justify it logically. It's such an obvious discrepancy that they feel they even need to bring it up, with number 18 stating she's stronger than him. And his only response is that somebody needs to look after their kid. I mean, yeah, fair. But if you have a wife who's a plumber and a pipe bursts, you don't say, "Nuh-uh, you stay here. Someone has to look after the kid." It just feels a little strained. If you're setting Kuririn up as a cop, why not just have him stumble into this Frieza scenario while on the job? Then you don't have to address this. On the other hand, though, I have mixed feelings about that because I think Kuririn and number 18 are really cute here. I like that she shaves his head, and I really like that when he flies off, number 18 comments to herself that he's really cool. Now, do I think this is some level of wish fulfillment for the target audience? That you can be a dorky little shrimp and your hot blonde wife will still let you go, "No, honey, stand back while I save the day," and she'll just think how cool you are? Yeah, sure, probably. But that doesn't keep me from thinking that there really is a couple's goals element to this. I think it's cute when people earnestly believe their partners are cool, even if, or especially if, it defies all reason. That's love, baby! But as long as we're on the subject of character selection, let's continue. I've said it before, but I really wish Dragon Ball had not made key detection something so pervasive that it can be read from across a planet and even beyond. Then you could just have characters be in the vicinity without ever having to come up with excuses as to why certain people are absent. If you want to tell a story where Kuririn, Kame-Sennin, Ten Shinhan, Gohan, and Piccolo show up to fight a threat, you can just do that. I don't even mind Kame-Sennin coming back into the fray years after he retired from fighting. Retirement doesn't mean you're dead. Well, sometimes you can be both. But if the characters are self-selecting a roster, it's just kinda weird. Especially given how he doesn't involve himself for the Saiyans, or the last time they sensed Freeza coming to Earth. Again, Kuririn invites Kame-Sennin to this, but insists his super-powered cyborg wife stay at home. But what's really funny to me is how the movie repeats Ten Shinhan's Cell Arc dictum of keeping Chaozu at home. Only this time he apparently said the same thing to Yamcha. Like, dude, who died and made you head coach? Remember Frieza's previous trip to Earth and how Kuririn and Gohan talk on the phone about it? I'm trying to picture this with Yamcha and Ten Shinhan. "Hey, Yamcha, do you sense that?" "Yeah, that's Freeza, isn't it? This is not going to be fun for me." "Oh, you were going to go?" "Yeah, unless you don't want me to." "I don't want you to." I suppose that could have been a scene the television version expands the story with, but instead it cuts out Ten Shinhan mentioning Yamcha. This version does keep Gohan saying they didn't tell Goten and Trunks out of fear they'd do something reckless. Boy, they are just never gonna let them live down that whole Majin Buu thing, are they? Speaking of Majin Buu, the characters bring him up too, hoping he'll join them. However, he fell asleep, and once he's asleep, that's the ball game. Well, that's a shame. It would have been nice to see how he fights on the good side. I sure hope this doesn't become something that happens all the time. Frieza and his forces arrive, as do Bluma and Jocko. Now that the characters have assembled, I think it's finally time for a good old-fashioned fashion. Old-fashioned fashion? That's funny. Wait, what was I doing? Oh, right, I was gonna do the... But now that I think about it, not everybody is here yet. I should wait until all the characters are here. Yeah, we're not doing a fashion extravaganza today. Just wouldn't be right. This isn't all that important, but seeing the horde of Frieza's army flying out of the ship reminds me of something Super likes to do. Sometimes when a character is set a distance away from the camera, rather than drawing a small version, they'll just scale down full-size drawings of that character. I don't necessarily hate it. It seems to logically make sense, but it does read odd to my eyes sometimes. It reminds me of those scaling effects from the 97 Dr. Slump crossover. But I don't know if this stands out to me because I'm more used to older animated works, made in the analog age where this is simply not done. I wonder if younger people don't notice this. Or I wonder if someone who's better versed in animation than I am could explain if there's a reason why this sometimes seems odd to me. Just throwing it out there. In this case, though, the reasoning behind this choice seems obvious. The necessity of populating so many characters into a scene. Dragon Ball Super is clearly using computers to copy character models rather than drawing hundreds of tiny figures in every shot. I get that. It does, however, create the very odd, very funny side effect of prominent characters in a shot being drawn in far less detail than the out-of-focus background extras off in the distance. Woof. Hey, don't be afraid of low-detail Frieza. Low-detail Frieza can't hurt you. Who am I kidding? Any Frieza can hurt you. When Frieza recognizes Kuririn, he flashes back to having killed him before. This might not surprise you given how much I hated Dragon Ball Daima wasting perfectly good time redrawing so many scenes from classic Dragon Ball, but when flashbacks happen, I tend to prefer them being actual clips rather than drawn from scratch. Flashbacks are supposed to be reminding you about something from the past, so why not let it be the thing from the past? I like that it doesn't match the new footage. I like that it looks like something out of a different show. Because it is. I get that little twinge of nostalgia. And I even like that desaturated sepia look they put on it. A lot of the times, Super does this. Sometimes they redraw. If we're picking teams, put me on this one. As if I'm ever picked for teams. Something else I didn't have time to talk about when I covered the movie is the extensive sequence of the non-Gokus fighting the non-Freezas. That's something I often see people use to defend this movie, even if they don't like the movie overall. Hey, at least it gives other characters something to do. It never clicked with me, though. Honestly, Jocko's section is the only part I find entertaining and creative enough to remember, which is weird given that he's the character who has the least justification for being here. That might sound out of character for me, given that I often lament that characters get shoved into the background. Don't I want them to accomplish something? Yeah, I want them to accomplish something. But I don't think that's solved by throwing them into a pointless fight they can use for their demo reels. Be honest with me, if the movie subbed out Ten Shinhan with Yamcha, or Number 18, or Chaozu, or a pool, would the story be any different? Well, with a pool maybe. I don't particularly have anything against these sequences, but I'd much rather see Dragon Ball do something meaningful with the characters. Well, how about that? Did Dragon Ball Super listen to me? This version doesn't cut out the fight sequence entirely. After all, why even bother having these characters show up if they don't fight at all? But it does cut it down significantly. Perhaps you're disappointed with the loss of spectacle. However, what they replace it with is much more enjoyable in my opinion, and certainly more meaningful. Krillin worries about once again facing down the villain who killed him, and that is causing him to, pardon the pun, freeze in battle. In another bit of notable characterization, Freeza notices this and decides to twist the knife. He offers a planet to any soldier who finishes Krillin off. That certainly gets everyone's attention. I'm not sure if it makes a heck of a lot of sense though, logistically I mean. See, the natural response to this is for Krillin's friends to step in and keep that from happening. And they try. Freeza notices that too, and also tells his forces to keep the others from getting involved. But he just told them all he's offering a big bonus to whomever kills Krillin. The thing about stirring up an unruly mob is that, well, they're unruly. Why would anybody keep fighting Gohan and the others? Who's going to hear those two things and go, well, I guess I'm part of the second group. I'll just hang back and not get a prize. Try that at your next Mr. Beast games. Put $1 million in a pile and tell your contestants half of you try to get the money, half of you don't. Figure it out amongst yourselves. See how that goes. Pandemonium should be breaking out here. And honestly, it would be pretty hilarious if it did. If Freeza realized he messed this up. Maybe he blows up a few henchmen to restore order. Then he has to assign them to two groups. Then he kind of rolls his eyes at the lack of discipline. As long as we're doing character stuff, why not go a little further? That aside, I like this little beat, even if it does resolve pretty quickly. Krillin immediately realizes these losers are no match for him, he gets his head in the game, and he kicks butt! Perhaps they could have done more with it. Perhaps it's something we've already seen Krillin go through. But I'll still take an honest-to-goodness character beat over the movie's mindless action. However, as much as this reminds me of very early Dragon Ball's Krillin, it also reminds me of Yamcha, who goes through the exact same thing during Frieza's previous visit to Earth. I've said it before that Krillin basically becomes the replacement Yamcha. They're both the down-to-earth everyman characters, both awkwardly interested in girls, etc. You've all seen my videos on the Saiyan arc. Krillin makes Yamcha redundant, and so while Krillin's threads are eventually developed and resolved, Yamcha's are left to rot. This might be the most direct example of that. I posited in the Cell arc that Yamcha's fear is introduced as a means of establishing him as a coward, a pitiful man that Bluma is correct to leave. And the only consequence for Yamcha is that he decides his fear was right, and all he can do is stand around and watch. So I find it incredibly interesting that when Kuririn is now given the exact same beat, it's being used to teach him that he can do the thing, that he is useful and powerful and can protect his family. It's just, I don't know, tell me I'm wrong. Speaking of protecting one's family, here's Gohan. And this is Shisami. He has next to no role in the movie, which is why I never bothered mentioning him when I covered the movie. In the movie, he fights Piccolo until Gohan steps in to finish him off. He's just your basic, boring movie henchman used to fulfill a mid-tier action sequence in between the small minion fights and the really big final boss fight. You know, there are moments like these where I feel that the Dragon Ball Super version of Resurrection F is specifically made to subvert the expectations of those who saw the movie. Because in this version, Gohan confronts Shisami, gives a little speech about how he has to make the world safe for his daughter to grow up, and then before they can fight, they both get a hole blown through their torsos. Expectations subverted. I suppose this is as good a time as any to bring up the fact that Dragon Ball Super is a far less bloody show than its predecessors. This is something that fans had already kind of gotten used to with Dragon Ball Kai, which had painted over a lot of the gorier violence from Dragon Ball Z. I've always heard this is because the newer Dragon Ball shows aired on Sunday mornings instead of Wednesday evenings. But it could also be changing tastes and values or the expectations of export into foreign markets. Someone who is better educated in this realm can feel free to help me confirm or deny. Regardless, it's obvious just by watching that things are different. This is a classic Dragon Ball impalement. We've seen so many of those over the years. And yeah, they're pretty violent, very bloody. So it does come across as quite jarring to see this. To me, it almost seems grosser to see this charred flesh with nothing coming out. I think I've seen people suggest that maybe ki blasts cauterize the wounds, a la lightsabers in Star Wars. And even in Star Wars, lightsabers originally caused horribly bloody wounds until one day they didn't. This is a weird situation for me to even be in, especially when you take Dragon Ball Kai into consideration. When I was first getting into Dragon Ball, it was through Funimation's dub of Dragon Ball Z, which at the time had all of its blood edited out and several episodes worth of content cut. Those were signs of how watered down this version was compared to the original. And in 1999, when Funimation started bringing more elements in-house and were being distributed for cable instead of syndication, a lot of the blood returned for the first time. It was a sign that this was more mature and pure and whatever. I mean, it certainly feels that way when you're 13. A decade later, with Dragon Ball Kai, we were once again getting a product that removed a lot of scenes, just like the dub used to do, and was editing out a lot of the graphic violence, just like the dub used to do. And that's not even getting into the fact that US broadcasts of Kai were more heavily edited than the original, and some more edited than others. It's also not getting into the nuances of what was justified and why. All I'm saying is, it was a very surreal time to be a Dragon Ball fan, seeing your history repeat itself, but from the Japanese side. Now that I'm old, though, and now that I'm not talking about re-edits of existing shows, I can't say Dragon Ball Super's lack of blood particularly bothers me. I mean, yes, this looks weird, and that does bother me. But on principle, I'm never coming into Super and going, oh man, there's no blood, this is lame. I don't think about it all that often, except when it's an injury so serious that it obviously draws my attention. I've been through my blood wars and my blood hype and all that stuff. I've seen Dragon Ball with blood and without it. I've seen characters change blood color. And all that material is still there whenever I want to go revisit it. At the end of the day, and I'm sure this is not a surprise to hear at all, I care about the story. Blood can make an action scene more impactful, to be sure. I'd be happy to see it there, but a lack of it is not going to ruin a good story, and its presence is not going to save a bad story. Basically, what I'm saying is that blood may be thicker than water, but story is thicker than blood. I mean, you ever see a book? Those things are thick. Thicker than Shisami's booty and those cheeky little briefs he's wearing. Oh, sorry, he's dead. That's kind of creepy for me to say about a dead guy. At any rate, Gohan and Shisami now have holes in them. But where did those holes come from? Why, they came from Tagoma. Wait, Tagoma? Did I mention him in the movie review? No. No, I didn't. Because he doesn't do anything. In fact, in the movie, he's supposed to be dead already. But in the series, he is not. Obviously. Whoa, another big change. What could this mean? Is this another example of the series course-correcting something from the movie? I guess we'll have to find out next time. Thanks so much for watching. Something, whatever I say at the end. We'll figure that out tomorrow. I certainly won't leave this placeholder here and forget to update it. I need to do my taxes. Yay, life is a never-ending series of tortures and tedium. Oh, I left that placeholder there and forgot to update it. There's my intelligence at it again. Have a good day.